Good afternoon, dear teachers. As we all know, we are having our second session on elements of speaking English in a classroom. ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ನ ಒಂದು ಉದ್ದೇಶಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡೋದು ಅಂತ ಆದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ತಿರೋ ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡುವಂತ ವಾತಾವರಣನ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೇಗೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ನಮ್ಮ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇದೊಂದು ಸಣ್ಣ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಆಗಿರತ್ತೆ. ತರಗತಿಯನ್ನ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಏನ್ ಬೇಕು ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ಮಾತನಾಡೋದನ್ನ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬೋಧನೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗುವಂತ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಬಳಸಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗೇನೆ ನಮ್ದು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದನ್ನ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಈ ಉದ್ದೇಶವನ್ನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನ ಕ್ರಿಯೇಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಹೇಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಶಾಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಹೋದಾಗ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆಗಳನ್ನ ಸಂಭಾಷಣಾ ತುಣುಕುಗಳು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ಲೇಟ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಭಾಷೆಯನ್ನ ಮಾತಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ನ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ನೋಡಬಹುದಾಗಿದೆ. Let's start our module today. So if there's a topic given to us like names of vehicles, it's a topic which is there in milestone 6 for grade 4 and 5 in our Kalika Chetarike document. So if you have to teach this particular topic, what tools can help us to teach this concept in our classroom? What are the tools that we will use to teach this concept in our classroom? So we would love to get your responses through chat section. So teachers, we have 1 minute to let you all answer us. What are the tools? ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವೊಂದು ಈ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ನೇಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಇದನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಯಾವ್ದ್ರ ಮೂಲಕ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ನ ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇದನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಪಾಠವನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಆಗಿರತ್ತೆ. ಎಸ್, ಚಾರ್ಟ್, ಫ್ಲಾಶ್ ಕಾರ್ಡ್ಸ್, vehicle charts, yes, vehicle models, picture of vehicles. What more can we use? Through questions, yes, we can ask questions about these vehicles. Through traffic signal, yes, we are getting really wonderful responses. Thank you, teachers. As you all said, we'll be using a lot of charts, sounds of vehicles, words related to it, and everything. Yes, those are all TLMs. Apart from all the TLMs that we have been speaking here, there are 3 language tools that we can use in our classroom to teach any topic. It need not be just names of vehicles, it can be any topic like vocabulary set, simple questions, and simple sentences are the 3 speaking tools that we can use in a language classroom. So now let's see briefly what are these. So as you all can say, a vocabulary set is a set of words or phrases or even sentences. So what does a vocabulary set look like? Any basic vocabulary set will have 3 categories for any given topic. They are definition, features, and examples. So the category of definition will have simple sentences or simple words that will define the topic that we have chosen. So for that given topic, the basic features will have words or phrases which describes the feature or characteristic of a topic. Then as we all know, the example category will have lot of examples listed down in that particular category. And our second tool that we will be using is simple questions. So what are these simple questions? We have already dealt a detailed module about simple questions, how to frame questions using question frameworks, or maybe using closed-ended and open-ended questions. All of these we have already taken a look at in our previous module. So for example, like as we have already discussed, there would be certain keywords in every question which can be replaced and using which we can frame other questions. Like if there's a question like, do you know what a vehicle is? You can replace the word vehicle, which is a keyword in the sentence, and frame another question like, do you know what a car is? Or do you know what an engine is? And the next language tool that we would be discussing is simple sentences. So, what is these simple sentences? How can we frame simple sentences? Again, just like we did in our questions, we can identify the keywords and replace them to frame simple sentences. Like, for example, if you have a sentence like a car moves on the road, here the word car and the phrase on the road are the keywords. You can replace them with any other words and frame your own sentences. Like, a boat moves on water, an aeroplane moves in the air. Now that we have had a brief discussion about all the three language tools that we need in our classroom, in this module we will be focusing more on simple sentences. We will learn to build and speak simple sentences. The milestones and learning outcome that we would be dealing with in this particular module is milestone 8 and milestone 9, that is extended family terms and Izzy and the train for grades 4 and 5, and learning outcome 6.8 and learning outcome 7.6 for grade 6 and 7. And we will also be speaking and practicing the three steps of sentence building, that is replacing keywords in sentences, forming sentences using sentence blocks, and adding informations to your sentence with basic questions.
So let us begin this module. Now that we have got a brief summary of the language tools, dear teachers, let us dive into today's topic of sentence building. Let's start with this question. Building new sentences or sentences of our own is a crucial element of learning English. And to be able to do this, we need to ask ourselves, what are the techniques that we can use to build our own sentences? Let's take some time to reflect on this question. So, what I think is there are some techniques with which we can all create our own sentences. So, the first step or the first technique of doing that would be replacing keywords in an existing sentence. So, the second step would be forming sentences using sentence blocks. And the third step is a method of adding information to your sentence with the help of simple questions and question words, which we'll be discussing in the step 3. Let's look at the first step and the first technique of replacing keywords in an existing sentence. Here, let us see how we can use sentence frameworks. But first, let's pick a topic, something like family. This topic of family will help us create sentences on family using existing sentences on the same topic. Let us consider our first sentence, which reads, "These are my grandparents." Here, the term grandparents is the keyword. Here, the keyword grandparents can be replaced with any other word from a similar category, like, let's say, uncles, aunts, brothers, sisters, parents, and so on. Replacing the keyword gives us a new sentence like, "These are my brothers." Replacing brothers with other words gives us different sentences like, "These are my parents." Let's look at another sentence. This reads, "My grandmother is my father's mother." Here, we can again identify the words grandmother, father, and mother as keywords. These keywords can be again replaced with any other word of the same category, like grandmother, uncle, aunt, mother, brother, and many more. Thus, we can create different sentences like, "My uncle is my mother's brother." Interesting method, isn't it? Yes, this brings us to our first activity, teachers. You all can see a sentence on your screen which reads, "These are my family members." Let us see how we can identify the keywords. The term family members is the keyword, and we can replace the keyword family members with any other words that you see on your screen. The task is to create a sentence of our own using the sentence as a framework by replacing the keyword with any word that you see on your screen. And we have a minute to do that. I request everybody to type their sentences in the chat section and share it across to us. ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಮೈ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್. ವಿ ಆರ್ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈಯಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಆಸ್ ದ ಕೀವರ್ಡ್, ಅಂಡ್ ನಾವು ಬೇರೆ ವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಇಂದ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರೀಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೊಸ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. We already have a bunch of sentences with us. Wonderful. Those were some really nice sentences from everybody, teachers. Wonderful participation. Now let's try one more. This is activity 2, and this is the next sentence that we are trying to use as a framework and create our own sentence. The sentence goes something like this: My grandmother is my father's mother. Here again, we are identifying grandmother, father, and mother as the keywords. Let us use this sentence as framework again, and let's replace these keywords and create our own sentences. Shall we? The time starts now. So teachers, ಈ ಟೈಮ್ ನಮಗೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಹಿಂಟ್ಸ್ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಮೇಲೆ. We will have to come up with our own words to fill or replace the keywords with. Thank you so much for all those sentences.
Now let us look at the second method, that is forming sentences using sentence blocks. So to build any basic sentence, we can take into consideration two blocks. That is, we will need two blocks to build a basic sentence. That is, the first block is what or who. The second one is action or description. So what are these? So if you have to say, if you are talking about any person or any object that will be referring in a sentence, that would comprise about the first block, that is what or who. When we are talking about an object or a person, it is, we are referring to the first block. And when we are talking about any quality or an action that is being performed by the object or person that we are speaking in the first block, will comprise in the second block. So for example, if we are talking about the boy, who are we talking about? We are talking about the boy. What is the boy doing? The boy is running. If we are talking about a bus, so what are we talking about? We are talking about the object, the bus. And what about the bus? The bus is big. We are describing the bus as big. Now let us see some of the examples. If we are talking about who in the first block, and we will talk about the action or description about the particular first block, whoever we are referring to. For example, now we have Izzy. Who are we talking about? We are talking about Izzy the lizard. What is Izzy doing? Izzy peered through the hole. What did she do? She peered through the hole. We are talking about an action here. Now, if you look at the picture there, we have a man. Who are we referring to? The man. What did the man do? What action did he do? He lifted the bags. So we can frame sentence saying the man lifted the bags. Now let us look at the third picture here. That is, we are referring to my uncle. Here is uncle. Who is he? He is my uncle. And how am I going to describe my uncle? My uncle is my mother's brother. So we talked about Izzy. What did Izzy do? Izzy peered through the hole. And we spoke about the man. And what did he do? He lifted the bags. We spoke about my uncle. What did we speak about my uncle? My uncle is my mother's brother. Now, let us talk about an object like maybe punctuation or some images that's already we are very familiar with. In the first image that we can see on our left hand side, there's an apostrophe. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about an apostrophe here. What about apostrophe? Apostrophe shows us possession. So, we use apostrophe to show us possession. That is how we can describe the punctuation mark apostrophe. When we look at the second picture here, the picture in your textbook. So this is a picture given in our textbook. What about that? Is of a woman named Nirja Bhanot. So we are describing the picture as it's a picture of Nirja Bhanot. Now we have a poem. The name of the poem that we are talking about is the poem Sympathy. It is written by poet Charles Mackay. So we are talking about the poet Charles Mackay. We are describing the poem. And we have a word, the word depressed. It's a word given in our glossary. So, what about the word depressed? The word depressed means feeling great pain or sorrow. We are describing the word saying that it's a feeling of great pain or sorrow. There are certain other sentences that we all come across in our day to day life, that is announcements. So, now in this set of examples, we will be talking about the announcements made at different places. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about announcements about school in our first image. So, announcements about the schools are made in an assembly. Where is it made? It's made in an assembly. It's a description about the announcements that are made in the school. In a railway station, arrival and departure. We are talking about arrival and departure are two kinds of announcements made in a railway station. So we are describing the announcements of arrival and departure that is made in a railway station as the two kinds of announcements that we get to hear in a railway station. So who are we talking about in our next sentence? We are talking about the bus conductor. What about the bus conductor? He makes an announcement about a bus. What does the bus conductor do? He makes an announcement about a bus. Whenever we go to any shopping mall, we get to hear announcements about discounts, right? So shopping mall attendants are the one who makes these announcements. So shopping mall attendants make announcements about discounts. So these are some of the examples, sentences that we come across in the category of announcements. Now we have an activity here. You can take the examples of the pictures that is given, and we want you all to frame the sentence using what or who, action or description, sentence building blocks. And to complete this activity, we have 2 minutes of time. Dear teachers, ಇವಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ಇದೆ. ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸೈಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ಬೋದು. there's a picture of uncle, there's a picture of bus, there's a picture of Nirja Bhanot. ಸೊ ಈ ಒಂದನ್ನ ಕ್ಲೂ ಆಗಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನೀವು ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ಹೂ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮತ್ತೆ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರಿಪ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಬ್ಲಾಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಿಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದಂತ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಮಗೆ ಚಾಟ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿಯನ್ನ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ 2 ನಿಮಿಷಗಳ ಕಾಲಾವಕಾಶ ಇರತ್ತೆ. Sushil, if you want to give an example for our teachers, what would be your sentence?
So if I'm using the first image of the grandpa, someone that looks like a grandpa to me, I can say my grandpa was a soldier.
That's nice. You are describing your grandpa as a soldier. The man is tall. He's my grandfather. Thank you, teachers. Now, this is an activity that we do come across in our Kalika Chetarika handbook. So, the activity is all about you need to pair up the learners and then the first student will assign certain task for the second student, whereas the second student will be blindfolded and he has to do the task while he is blindfolded. So this is a simple activity that is there in our Kalika Chetarike handbook for grade 6. Now we come across lot of activities that are instruction based. So what are the sentences that we can come across when it is instruction based sentences? Now let's see about look at it. So there's a first block that is who, and then it says about who are we addressing. Are we addressing our learners, or do you want the teacher to say something? And then there comes the action block. So what needs to be done when that particular instruction is given? For example, who are we referring to? We are referring to students. What are we saying the students to do? To pair up with each other. So we can frame a sentence saying students pair up with each other. So just imagine that you have a student by name Ankit. You are instructing Ankit to do something. So at that time you can say, Ankit, give Guru a simple instruction. So you are asking Ankit to give a student with name Guru a simple instruction. So what is the next instruction that you would give for Guru? Guru, do this task while you are blindfolded. So these are some of the instructional based sentences that we can form using these two blocks, that is who and action. And the other instructions where the teacher themselves are giving, like when we are saying that this needs to be done or this is what I want you to do, then what are the sentences that we would be using? I want you to open the English textbook. I would say, I want you to listen carefully. These are some of the instructions that we use in our day to day classes, right? So now here comes another activity where we want all our teachers to form sentences with using who and action block. You can also use the sentences that are like, we have already given who and we want you to add action to it, or you can frame your own sentence based on all instructions that you would be giving in your classroom. And to complete this activity you would be having 2 minutes of time. Dear teachers, ಇದೊಂದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ಆಗಿದೆ. ನಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ತಿಳಿದಿರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ನಾವು ಕೊಡುವಂತ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ನ ಮೂಲಕ ನಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತಿಳಿಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗಿರತ್ತೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಲಿಸನ್ ಕೇರ್ಫುಲಿ ಅನ್ನುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಈ ತರದ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿ ವಿನಂತಿ. ಇದನ್ನ ನೀವು ಈ ಒಂದು ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ನನ್ನ ಬಾಕ್ಸ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ತಿಳಿಸಿ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್.
With this, we come to our third step or third technique of into creating sentences, which is adding information to your sentence with the help of basic questions. So now we have already practiced creating sentences using already existing sentences. We have also created our own sentences. Let's add a bit of information, extra information, to make our sentences more meaningful. How are we going to do that? We have already created sentences using these blocks of who or what we are talking about. We have added to that block with the second block of action or description about who or what we are talking about. Now, let's try adding another layer of instruction with the reason, the process, time, or the place regarding that action or description, which is based on who or what we are talking about. So, how do we do that? Under who or what, we refer to the subject or the person or the thing that we want to describe. Under the second block, we say what the action is that person doing, or what description does that person hold, or what description does that thing have. So when it comes to the third layer of information, we add these layers of information by asking ourselves these questions, which are why, how, when, and where is those actions are being done, and something like why did the object or the person achieve that quality when we are talking about description. Let's see how these work. So let's try to look at the first sentence, which is about a little girl. So the first block tells us that the sentence is about the little girl who was doing what action? The little girl was filled with sympathy for the little bird. Okay, let's now add another layer, a third layer of information to this sentence by asking the reason for the action that the little girl was doing. The little girl was filled with sympathy for the little bird. Let's ask why. Then we say, because she thinks that the bird must be feeling very cold. So now, by asking why to ourselves and answering to that, and adding that bit of information to our existing sentence, we create a more meaningful sentence which reads, the little girl was filled with sympathy because she thinks the bird must be very cold. Now let's ask ourselves another question and add a next layer of information to this, or a different information to this. Let's ask about how. The little girl was filled with sympathy for the little bird from her heart. Is the answer, or is the sentence that we create by addressing the element of process or asking ourselves how. Now let's ask ourselves at what time, or let's try to add the element of time into our sentence and make this sentence of the little girl was filled with sympathy for the little bird when she saw the bird in the park. In the same way, let's add the information about place. For that, we'll have to ask ourselves where. Then the sentence would be, the little girl was filled with sympathy for the little bird in the park. This is quite easy and quite interesting technique. This is the time for us to participate in another activity, teachers. Here you have an example in front of you. You have a sentence in front of you where you'll see that the what and who block is filled, which tells us that the sentence is going to be about the bird. The action or the description block tells us that the action that the bird did was the bird feels sad for the little girl. Now the bird is feeling sad for the little girl. Let's add the third layer of information, just like we have discussed already, by asking ourselves for what reason, how, at what time, and which place. Let's try doing that and add the third layer and make the sentence a bit more meaningful. ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ನಾವೀಗೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ which reads, the bird feels sad for the little girl. ಈ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಥರ್ಡ್ ಲೇಯರ್ ಆಫ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ರೀಸನ್, ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್, ಟೈಮ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಸಂಬಂಧಿತ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಈ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಇನ್ನೂ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ಫುಲ್ ಮಾಡೋದನ್ನ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. Let us take a time of around a minute or two to try doing this. Yeah, let's make it more interesting. I think I'll ask my friend here to help us out with one of her answers. Kriti, can you try answering to this, asking yourself any of the how, where, why, questions and add the third layer of information to this.
The bird feels sad for the little girl in the evening.
Wonderful. So you added the element of place. Oh, you added the element of time. But we already have more sentences here, Kriti. They read, girl has no freedom like bird. Very nice. Wonderful sentences. Thank you, teachers. Really imaginative sentences. Now let's look at some sentences of our own here. So here, the who or what that we are talking about is we. What are we doing? We listen to announcements. So it's an action that the who or what is doing. We listen to announcements. Now we ask ourselves why. So the reason is because it helps us receive information. So the sentence becomes, we listen to announcements because it helps us receive information. In the same way, keeping the topic of announcements, I can ask the question of how to myself and add information of how do I listen to announcements or how do we listen to announcements. So the sentence will be, we listen to announcements through a microphone and speaker. Likewise, asking about the time element, I can say, we listen to announcements when we want information. Asking about the where, adding the place element of it, the sentence becomes, we listen to announcements at public places. So let's try doing some more. This is again an activity. You see a bunch of sentences here which read, announcements about a bus are made for travelers. And there is the third block, which is empty. Again, let's use these sentences and add the third layer of information by asking why, where, how, and at what time. Teachers, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋ sentence ಅನ್ನ use ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು a question mark is a punctuation dash. So we'll add the element of reason, process, time, and place. So the time we have is 2 minutes. Remember teachers, now third element ಅನ್ನ add ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ, the third layer of information ಅನ್ನ add ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ by asking ourselves why, how, where, and at what time or when. Let's try doing this first. I'm curious to know what my friend Kriti here has to add to this in any of these sentences. Kriti, can you try adding a third layer of information to maybe the second question or the second sentence that we see about a question mark?
A question mark is a punctuation that is added at the end of a question.
Wonderful. So that is a place related information. She asked herself, where does a question mark is used? So the element, the information that she added was a question mark is a punctuation mark which is used at the end of the sentence. Wonderful. I think teachers, what we can try doing is, again, let's remember what we need to do here. Now, announcement about a bus are made for travelers ಅನ್ನೋ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಯಾಕೆ, ಹೇಗೆ, ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಅನ್ನೋ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಈ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸಿಗೆ ಆಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. I think we have reached the end of this clock. So let's stop this activity and move on. Let's look at more such sentences and I think we'll be able to play around the activity a bit better. So let's look at who and what that we're talking about, which is students. What are they doing? Students listen to the instructions because you will need to remember what I'm saying. So this is an announcement. This is an instruction given by a teacher in the classroom where she's telling the students, listen to the instructions because you will need to remember what I am saying. Let's see. Can we add different information to this? Students, listen to the instructions carefully. How? Carefully. Students, listen to the instructions when I say start. When do you listen to the instructions? When I say start. Nice. Students, listen to the instructions at the beginning of activity number 22. So where do you have to listen to my instructions? You have to listen to the instructions at the beginning of activity number 22. Okay, I think we are up for another activity. Teachers, another sentence in front of you all. Students, stand up and dash. Let us try filling in the third layer of information again with reason, process, time, or place. Our time has begun. So ನಾವು ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಅಪ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನಿಗೆ ಟೀಚರ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರೋ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನಿಗೆ ಆ್ಯಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಯಾವ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಆ್ಯಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, ಹೇಗೆ, ಯಾವಾಗ, ಯಾಕೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆ್ಯಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ. ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ with that wonderful activity and wonderful participation of all the teachers, we come to the end of this session.
Okay. Thank you, teachers.